Today, I am explaining the plot of Ratatouille. There's a person who can cook. Everyone's like, wow, you can cook. And then there's one dude who's like, no, you can't cook. And then he's sad. He's saying, I can't cook. And then they're like, hey, I guess you can't cook. And then it's like, he's sad and he dies. And then, since he died, people are more like, you can't cook. Cause dead people can't cook. So now, his friend owns the restaurant, and he's like, hey, I'm mean, I can cook, you can't cook, so cook. And then he's like, hey, go cook. But then there's this dude who's like, I can't cook. Then the dude's like, you can't cook. But then he can't cook, so he cooks wrong. But then a rat comes in and says, hey, no, you can cook. And then he's like, I can cook. And then the rat's like, no, you can't cook. And then he's like, I can't cook. But then the rat's like, I can help you cook. And then he's like, okay, cook for me. And then the dude's like, hey, you cooked? And then he's like, yeah, I did. And then it's like he cooks, and then the rat cooks, and then they cook, and then they do a bunch more cooking, and then it's like, hey, did you know that I can cook? And then it's like, yeah, you can cook. And then it's like, I'm gonna teach you how to cook. And then it's like, no. They're like, okay. So then he's being taught how to cook. And then he says, hey, I like you. And then she's like, hey, I like you. And then the rat's like, I can cook, let's cook. And then they cook. And then the dude's like, hey, I have a rat who's helping me cook, so I can't cook. And then she's like, hey, that's mean, I don't like you. And he's like, oh, that's sad. And then everyone leaves, but then she comes back and says, hey, let's cook. And then they cook, and then everything's good again. I'm sorry if I spoiled Ratatouille for you, because the explanation was so explicit, so just, yeah, sucks for you, bye!